The day a hospital receptionist looked at my son like he was a bill instead of a child, I realized being poor was not the worst thing that could happen to us. Being found was. Noah had only slipped once on the school field. One bad fall. One sharp cry. Now he was curled against me in a plastic yard chair, his little fingers gripping my sleeve while I stood at the counter begging a stranger to care. He is dizzy. He hit his head. Please. The woman did not even glance up for a full second. Then she tapped her keyboard and said, without valid insurance or a $5,000 deposit, we cannot move him upstairs yet. My face burned. My throat closed. Public shame always sounded louder under fluorescent lights. He is 7, I snapped. He needs a doctor. She finally looked at me. Cold. Bored. Then find a way to pay, ma'am. Noah tugged my hand. Mom, I am okay. He was not. His skin had gone too pale. His voice had gone too soft. A nurse rushed over when he swayed, and suddenly everything moved fast. Questions. A wheelchair. A curtain. A blood draw. I ran beside him with my heart pounding so hard it felt borrowed. Stay with me, baby. Noah blinked up at me. I am trying. That almost broke me. Then the nurse frowned at the monitor. Not at Noah. At the screen. She glanced at his blood sample label, then at me, then back again. Is there a problem? I asked. No, she said too quickly. Standard processing. But 2 minutes later, I caught a man in a dark suit outside the curtain lifting his phone and taking a picture of my son. Everything inside me turned to ice. I stepped in front of Noah so fast the chair legs scraped the floor. Who are you? The man lowered the phone and walked away without a word. No apology. No explanation. Just silence. The kind rich people wore when they thought they did not owe the rest of us anything. I held Noah's hand tighter, but it was already too late. Somewhere else in this city, a blood test had just told the wrong people that my secret son existed. And before I could figure out who had found him first, I heard a nurse whisper 3 words outside the door. Call Ethan Calloway. By the time I heard Ethan Calloway's name outside that ER curtain, I was not thinking about the past. I was thinking about exits. Noah was still on the bed, pale and quiet, with a cartoon bandage on his arm and wires on his chest. I bent down and smoothed his hair back. We are leaving the second they clear you, okay? He looked at me with those wide gray eyes and whispered, is it the bad people again? My stomach dropped so hard it hurt. No one is taking you anywhere, I said, but my voice came out too fast, too thin. Then the room changed. Not loudly. That would have been easier. It changed the way rich places always do. A nurse straightened up. A doctor lowered his voice. 2 security men appeared near the hall like they had been summoned by money itself. And then he walked in. Ethan Calloway. Tall. Sharp suit. Controlled face. 7 years gone, and somehow he still looked like the kind of mistake a woman could ruin her life over. His eyes landed on me first. A pause. A flicker. Gone. Then he looked at Noah, and the air in the room turned dangerous. Step outside, Ms. Bennett. His voice was calm. That made it worse. I stood between him and my son. No, Ethan did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Your child's blood triggered a private family alert. I need answers now. My whole body went cold. He knew my name. He knew enough to be here. That was already too much. You do not need anything from me, I shot back. And you are not coming near my son. For 1 second, something hard flashed behind his eyes. Not softness. Not memory. Calculation. He looked at Noah again, and I hated how quickly he saw it. The shape of the jaw. The eyes. The truth I had spent 7 years burying. Get him discharged, I snapped at the nurse. We are done here. I grabbed Noah's backpack, signed papers with a shaking hand, and walked him out before anyone could stop me. I almost made it to the parking garage. Almost. Ethan stepped in front of my car just as I opened the back door for Noah. He did not touch me. He just stood there like the city belonged to him. If that boy is who I think he is, he said, each word clean and cold, running will not save him. Then he looked past me, straight at Noah, and my heart slammed against my ribs. Because Ethan was not staring at a stranger's child anymore. He was staring at the heir his family had been hunting for. I did not breathe until I had Noah inside my car, the doors locked, and the hospital shrinking in the rearview mirror. Even then, my hands would not stop shaking. Noah sat in the back seat with his backpack on his lap like he thought we might have to run again in the next 5 minutes. Maybe we would. Mom, he said softly, was that man looking at me because of my dad? The question cut clean. Too clean. I kept my eyes on the road and lied the way mothers do when the truth is too ugly for a 7-year-old. No. He was just somebody from the hospital. Noah went quiet. Then quieter. You always say that when it is bad. I had no answer for that. By the time we reached our apartment building, the sky had gone dark and the front porch light was still broken, same as last week. Same as every week the landlord promised to fix it and did not. I got Noah upstairs, made him tea he barely touched, and checked the blinds twice before I even took off my shoes. I was still standing there when someone pounded on the door. Hard. Mrs. Dolan. Of course. I opened it 3 inches, and she shoved a pink overdue notice into my hand. Rent was due 4 days ago, Claire. Her eyes flicked past me into the apartment. And if you are bringing trouble here, I need to know. Heat rushed up my neck. Public shame had followed me home. I said I would pay you Friday. She crossed her arms. You said that last Friday too. Behind me, Noah stepped into view in his socks, and her face tightened in that small, cruel way people have when they think poverty is contagious. I shut the door before she could say one more word. Then I leaned against it and let the silence hit. Noah looked at me from the couch, too old in the eyes, too young everywhere else. Are we moving again? I swallowed hard. Maybe for a little while. After he fell asleep, I opened the old tin box I had not touched in months. Inside was the Charleston ferry ticket Ethan bought me the summer I was stupid enough to believe love could outrun power. Under it was the letter I wrote when I found out I was pregnant. The one I mailed. The one he never answered. I stared at my own handwriting until it blurred. You left me first, I whispered into the dark, like I still needed him to hear it. But the whisper did not make me feel stronger. It made me feel hunted. So I did the only thing fear has ever taught me to do well. I pulled a duffel bag from the closet, started packing for me and Noah, and promised myself we would be gone by sunrise. I only prayed Ethan Calloway had not already found us again. By 8 the next morning, I had Noah dressed, our duffel bag packed, and one last lie ready on my tongue. We were not running. We were just leaving early. That was what I told him as I walked him into St. Matthew's Elementary to sign his withdrawal papers before anyone could stop me. I almost made it to the front office without shaking. Almost. Then I heard my name. Claire Bennett? A woman in a cashmere coat turned from the reception desk and looked me over like I was something damp she had found on her shoe. I recognized her. Heather Sloan. One of those mothers who treated the school like a private country club. Her eyes dropped to Noah, then to my duffel bag. Are you taking him out because of what happened at the hospital? My stomach locked. That is none of your business. She gave me a thin smile. When a child's guardianship is in question, it becomes everyone's business. The words hit hard. Public. Cold. Deliberate. Noah moved closer to me, his small hand finding mine, and that alone nearly broke my control. I stepped to the counter. I need his records. Now. The receptionist did not move. She looked past me toward the hallway, then back again. I am sorry, Ms. Bennett. We have been instructed to hold release until we verify custodial authority. For 1 second, I thought I had misheard her. Then the room tilted. My authority? I laughed once. Sharp. Angry. I am his mother. A school security officer appeared at the side door like he had been waiting for the cue. Not touching me. Not yet. But close enough to make the point. Humiliation burned through me so fast I could taste it. Noah looked up at me with fear he was trying too hard to hide. Mom? That one word did it. I pulled him behind me and faced the desk. You do not get to hold my son because some rich family made a phone call. Heather folded her arms. If there is nothing suspicious, why are you in such a hurry to disappear? I was opening my mouth to tear her apart when the office went silent. Not softer. Not calmer. Controlled. The kind of silence money buys before it speaks. Ethan Calloway walked in wearing a dark coat and that same unreadable face, and every person in the room shifted around him like he owned the floor under our feet. My pulse jumped straight into my throat. He looked at me once, then at Noah, then back at the receptionist. Release the child to his mother, he said. Just that. Clean. Final. The security officer stepped back immediately. Heather's expression cracked. Mr. Calloway, with respect, the family must want this handled properly. Ethan turned his head just enough to freeze her in place. I did not ask what the family wants. The room exhaled. I should have felt relieved. I did not. I felt exposed. Cornered. Bought off by a man I did not trust. He waited until Noah's records were placed in my hand, then looked at me with those cold, impossible eyes. We need to talk, Claire. I clutched the folder so hard the edges bit my skin. No. We do not. Ethan's jaw tightened, only slightly, but I saw it. If Noah is who I think he is, he said quietly, you cannot disappear again. Ethan did not ask twice. He just opened the back door of a black town car parked across from the school and looked at me like the conversation had already started without my permission. I should have walked away. I almost did. Then Noah tugged my sleeve and whispered, Mom, I am hungry. That small, normal sentence cut straight through the panic. I could not drag him onto a bus with a duffel bag, a school folder, and half the city suddenly watching us. So I put him in the car. Not because I trusted Ethan. Because I trusted the world even less. 10 minutes later, we were in a private corner of a coffee shop that smelled expensive and quiet. Noah sat by the window with a grilled cheese and a hot chocolate Ethan ordered without asking, and I hated that he remembered Noah was still just a child in the middle of all this. Ethan sat across from me, hands still, face unreadable. You have 30 days, he said. No greeting. No apology. Just pressure. 30 days until my grandfather opens a revised inheritance file. Someone in my family has been searching for a missing blood heir ever since my cousin died. My fingers tightened around the paper cup until the lid bent. Then go search somewhere else. Ethan leaned in, not close enough to touch, close enough to pin me in place. Claire, Noah's blood triggered a restricted family marker. That does not happen by accident. I laughed once. Bitter. Everything in your world sounds like ownership. His jaw tightened. In my world, information keeps people alive. That landed harder than I wanted it to. Because I believed him. A little. I hated that most. He slid a sealed envelope across the table. Inside was a formal request for a private DNA test. Clean. Legal. Cold. No, I said immediately. You do not get to test my son like he is a piece of property. Ethan did not flinch. If you refuse, others in my family will come at you without rules. I shoved the envelope back. And if I agree, what then? You stamp your last name on him and take him? For the first time, something sharp cracked through his control. If I wanted to take him, Claire would not be sitting here asking. The words hit like a threat even if they were meant as truth. I stood so fast my chair scraped the floor. Noah turned at the sound, and I forced my voice steady. We are leaving. Ethan rose too, calm as ever, and that calm made me want to scream. You are making this harder than it has to be. I grabbed Noah's hand, my bag, the school records, everything. No. You already did that 7 years ago. Ethan went still at that. Good. Let him feel. 1 inch of what I had carried. I led Noah toward the door, refusing to look back. Then Ethan's voice followed me, low and flat and impossible to ignore. If you do not let me protect him, Claire, the rest of them will find Noah before sunset. I should have listened when Ethan said the rest of them would find Noah before sunset. I did not. I packed faster instead. By 6 o'clock, our duffel bag was back in the trunk, Noah was strapped into the back seat, and I was heading west on the interstate with no plan beyond distance. Sometimes survival is not a strategy. It is motion. Are we going somewhere fun? Noah asked, trying so hard to sound brave that it hurt. I forced a smile into the rearview mirror. We are taking a little trip. He nodded, but he did not believe me. Smart kid. Too smart. The city lights faded behind us. For 10 whole minutes, I let myself think maybe I had one. Then a black SUV appeared in my mirror. Too close. Too steady. Another one slid into the lane beside me. My hands locked on the wheel. Noah, I said, keeping my voice level by force, put your seatbelt tight against your chest. He looked up immediately. Mom? I did not answer. I pressed the gas. The SUV on my left matched me. The one behind me stayed there like a shadow with money. My pulse slammed so hard I could hear it. Ethan was right. That was the worst part. Not that we were being followed. That he had warned me, and I still chose pride over safety. My phone lit up on the console. Unknown number. I ignored it. It rang again. Then again. On the 4th call, I hit accept. What? Ethan's voice came through, cold and clipped. Do not hang up. Take exit 41 now. My breath caught. How do you know where I am? Because they are not the only ones watching the highway, he said. Claire, listen to me. The SUV behind you is not mine. Ice flooded straight through me. You expect me to trust you now? No, Ethan said. I expect you to protect Noah. That did it. I cut across one lane, then another, tires humming too hard against the road. The black SUV on my left surged forward. Noah gasped. In the back seat. Mom, what is happening? Nothing I cannot handle, I lied. The exit ramp curved sharp, and for one terrifying second I thought I had lost it. Then headlights swept across the dark from the opposite side. A silver car shot between us and the trailing SUV with brutal precision, forcing the black vehicles to brake and split. My car jerked as I took the ramp too fast. I pulled onto the shoulder with my whole body shaking. 2 seconds later, Ethan's car stopped in front of us. He was out before the engine fully died. He yanked open my door, eyes blazing, not soft, not warm, just furious. Are you trying to get your son killed to prove you do not need me? I stumbled out, rage hitting just as hard as fear. Do not you dare act like this is my fault. Then stop making it easy for them. His voice cracked like a command, and I hated that part of me wanted to obey it. Noah pushed open the back door and looked between us, scared and small and exhausted. Ethan saw him, and something in his face changed. Not gentle. Not yet. But lower. More dangerous in a different way. He crouched just enough to meet Noah's eyes. They are gone now, he said. You are safe. Noah stared at him for one long second, then whispered the words that stopped all the air in my lungs. The man from the hospital. Ethan looked up at me over the roof of the car, the highway lights cutting his face into shadow and steel. You are coming with me, he said. Tonight, you do not get to say no. The first thing I noticed about Ethan's safe house was how quiet it was. Not peaceful. Controlled. The kind of silence that came from thick walls, gated land, and enough money to keep the world out. I hated it on sight. Noah did not. He stood in the middle of the living room in his sneakers and wrinkled hoodie, staring at the stone fireplace and the floor-to-ceiling windows like we had stepped into somebody else's life by mistake. Ethan set our bag down near the stairs and looked at Noah, not me. There is a bedroom upstairs on the left. You can sleep there tonight. Noah looked up at him, serious and tired and too brave for 7. Are you a cop? Ethan paused. No, then are you one of the bad guys? The question sliced through the room. I stiffened before Ethan could answer. Noah. But Ethan crouched slightly, not soft exactly, just careful. If I were one of the bad guys, would not have gotten you off that highway. Noah thought about that. Then he nodded once, like he had accepted terms in a deal he did not fully understand. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt something worse. Pulled. Off balance. By morning, I came downstairs ready for another battle and stopped cold in the doorway. Ethan was standing in the kitchen in rolled-up sleeves, looking personally offended by a frying pan. Noah sat at the island watching him like this was the greatest show on earth. It is supposed to be round, Noah said, pointing at the lopsided pancake. Ethan gave the pan a dark look. It is food. That is enough. Noah grinned. A real grin. The first one since the hospital. Something inside me twisted so hard I had to grip the doorframe. Ethan looked up and caught me there. He said he was hungry. His voice was flat, but the sight in front of me was not. I folded my arms. So this is what now? Breakfast diplomacy? Ethan set the spatula down. Believe whatever makes this easier for you. I wanted to throw that line back at him. I wanted to remind him that men like Ethan always looked most dangerous when they were calm. Instead, I watched my son laugh when the second pancake came out even worse than the first, and for 1 weak second, I saw something I should not have wanted. Not safety. Not yet. But shape. A shape the three of us could have fit into if life had been kinder. That was exactly why I distrusted it. Later, when Noah was in the den with cartoons on low volume, Ethan found me by the window overlooking the trees. Tell me what happened 7 years ago, he said. No warning. No easing in. I let out one dry laugh. You mean the part where I learned not to wait for you? His face did not move, but something sharpened behind his eyes. Claire. I turned on him fast. No. You do not get that name in your mouth like nothing happened. The words came out hotter than I meant, because heat was easier than grief. Ethan held my gaze. Then tell me why you disappeared. I stared at him, stunned by the nerve of it. I disappeared? My voice dropped, thin with disbelief. I wrote to you. I called. I was carrying your child, Ethan. For 1 second, he actually looked shaken. Then the television in the next room cut through the silence. A bright anchor voice. Too bright. Rumors are intensifying around the Calloway succession after reports of a possible surviving heir. I turned toward the sound. Ethan moved at the same time. And in that instant, I knew our little island of quiet was already over. The first thing Ethan did after the news segment cut off was mute the television. The second was turned back to me with that same cold focus that made every room feel smaller. We are doing the DNA test today, he said. Not asked. Decided. I laughed once, sharp and tired. There it is. He did not blink. This is not optional anymore. My whole body went tight. Noah was 10 feet away in the den, building something out of blocks and pretending not to listen. I lowered my voice anyway. You do not get to drag my son into a lab because your family is panicking over money. Ethan stepped closer, not touching me, just pressing with presence. This is about control. I looked him dead in the face. Exactly. Yours. That landed. Good. But he did not back off. If Noah is my son, I need proof before the rest of them move faster. My pulse kicked hard at the words my son. Not because I wanted them. Because a part of me had waited too long to hear them. I crushed that part immediately. You do not get to say that now, I said. Not after 7 years of silence. Ethan's jaw flexed. I was not silent. I stared at him. Then I laughed again, but this time it almost hurt. Do not insult me. He held my gaze. I never got a letter. I never got a call. I never knew you were pregnant. The room went still. Too still. For 1 weak second, I hated that he sounded like he meant it. Then anger rushed in and saved me. I wrote to you from Charleston. I called. Until I ran out of money. I waited, Ethan. My voice shook, and I despised that too. You vanished. Something in his face shifted. Small. Real. Dangerous in a different way. Claire, he said, quieter now, I swear to you, I did not know. I should not have believed even one syllable. But before I could answer, a car door slammed outside. Not one. Several. Ethan's expression hardened instantly. He looked toward the front drive, then back at me. Go upstairs with Noah. I did not move. Who is it? He was already pulling his phone from his pocket. The last person I wanted here. A woman's voice rang through the entry hall a second later. Polished. Confident. Familiar in the worst possible way. Ethan, she called, like she belonged in his life and this house. I think it is time I met the child. Vanessa Whitmore walked into Ethan's safe house like she owned the air in it. Cream coat. Diamond studs. Perfect posture. The kind of woman who had never once been told to wait behind a billing counter while her child got weaker. She stopped 3 feet from me and gave me a smile so polished it almost counted as cruel. You must be Claire. I kept my hand on Noah's shoulder. And you must be lost. Noah leaned against my side, quiet now, watching everything. Smart boy. Vanessa's eyes flicked to him, then back to me. Not warm. Not curious. Measuring. I am here to help prevent a scandal, she said. For everyone's sake. I felt the insult before the words had even finished landing. Ethan stepped in from the foyer, jaw hard. You were not invited. Vanessa turned to him like his tone was a minor inconvenience. Your grandfather is concerned. The board is concerned. Reporters are already circling. If that child is connected to the Calloways, we need to handle this cleanly. Then she reached into her bag and laid a slim envelope on the table between us. A settlement. Generous. Immediate. Private. My skin went hot, then cold. There it was. The price of my humiliation in neat paper and expensive stationery. You think I came here to sell my son? I asked. Vanessa's expression barely moved. I think women in difficult situations deserve options. Ethan's eyes cut to the envelope like he wanted it gone. But he still had not told her. To leave. That silence stung more than it should have. I looked at him and hated myself for even wanting him to speak faster. Say something. My voice came out low. Sharp. Ethan finally did. Put it away, Vanessa. Too late. The damage was already done. She lifted one shoulder. I am trying to protect your family from a woman who appears out of nowhere with a child and a story. Noah stiffened beside me. That was it. I stepped forward before I could stop myself. You do not get to talk about my life like it is a headline. Vanessa looked almost bored. Then do not make it one. Ethan moved then. Fast. Controlled. He took the envelope, did not open it, and handed it back to her. This conversation is over. Vanessa's smile thinned. Is it? Or are you just refusing to say what everyone else is thinking? Her gaze slid to Noah again. If the test confirms anything, the smartest thing for the child may be distance. Privacy. Stability. Not this. My heart slammed so hard I could hear it. Not this. Meaning me. Meaning my apartment. My job history. My whole life. I should have thrown her out myself. I should have screamed. Instead I stood there and let the silence crush me, because Ethan still had not said the one thing I needed him to say. That she was wrong. That I was not the problem. He only looked at her with that cold, unreadable face and said, "Leave." Vanessa gave him one long glance, then turned and walked toward the door like she had lost a round, not the war. The second she was gone, I stepped back from Ethan like his skin could burn. You should have shut that down the second she opened her mouth. His voice stayed level. I did. I laughed. Bitter. No. You ended it. That is not the same thing. Noah looked up at me, confused and tired and hearing too much. I crouched and brushed his hair back. Go upstairs for a minute, baby. He hesitated, then nodded and walked away. The second he was out of the room, I faced Ethan again. If you agree with even one word she said, tell me now. Ethan stared at me, jaw tight, eyes unreadable as stone. And that was the problem. I could not tell whether he had just protected me from Vanessa or stayed quiet because some part of him believed she was right. By the next morning, the world had found us anyway. I saw it on Ethan's kitchen island before I even picked up my coffee. A gossip site had posted a grainy photo of me carrying Noah out of the hospital, Ethan just behind us, and the headline screamed exactly what people like Vanessa wanted it to scream. Secret child scandal rocks Calloway empire. My stomach dropped so hard I had to grip the counter. Noah padded into the room in borrowed pajamas, rubbing his eyes. Why do you look mad? I turned the phone face down so fast it almost slipped from my hand. I am not mad. Just tired. He looked at me for 1 second too long. Then Ethan walked in, took one glance at my face, and knew. Who leaked it? I asked. He picked up the phone, jaw tightening as he read. I will handle it. I let out a dry laugh. That is your answer for everything. But anger was easier than fear, and fear was winning. 2 hours later, it got worse. My phone rang from the diner where I worked weekend shifts. Gloria, my manager, did not even say hello. Claire, I cannot have reporters outside my place asking questions about some billionaire mess. Do not come in this week. I closed my eyes. Gloria, I need that job. Her voice softened for half a second. I know. I am sorry. Then the line went dead. I stood there with my phone in my hand and the ugly weight of it all pressed down at once. My rent. My pride. My son. Everything in my life had just been turned into a headline, and Ethan's world had done that to us before it had done anything else. I should have stayed angry. I was angry. But when Noah stepped onto the back patio 20 minutes later to get some air, 2 photographers were already at the front gate with lenses pointed through the bars. One of them called out, "Hey, kid, is Ethan Calloway your dad?" Noah froze. I did too. Then Ethan moved. Fast. He was out the front door before I could reach Noah, his voice cutting across the driveway like steel. Put the cameras down and leave the property now. No shouting. No. Scene. Just command. The men backed off, but not before Noah ran straight toward me and buried his face in my side. I held him so tight he squirmed. Ethan turned back toward us, eyes hard, expression unreadable. This is why you cannot stay here much longer, I said, my voice shaking. No, he said. This is exactly why you can. He looked at Noah, then at me. Pack what you need. You and Noah are moving to the penthouse. Today. The penthouse did not feel like a home. It felt like a decision I had not made. Glass walls. Private elevator. Quiet so polished it almost echoed. Noah stepped inside with his backpack hanging off one shoulder and turned in a slow circle. This is where he lives. I hated how small my own life felt reflected in those windows. Only for now, I said. Everything was only for now. That was how I survived things that wanted to become permanent. Noah wandered toward the living room, stopping at a shelf lined with books and framed photos that looked too curated to be real. Ethan came in behind us with one hand in his coat pocket, calm as ever, like moving us into his world was just another item on a schedule. Your room is down the hall, he told Noah. If you want to change anything, ask. Noah looked up at him. Even the bed? Ethan glanced at the oversized navy comforter and said, completely serious, especially the bed. Noah nodded like that answer mattered. Then he ran off with a staff woman named Teresa to see the room, leaving me alone with the man who had just rearranged my entire life. I turned on Ethan fast. You do not get to make unilateral decisions for us. He met my anger with that maddening stillness. Reporters were photographing your son through a gate. My son, I snapped. Do not forget that. His expression did not change, but something in his eyes did. I have not forgotten him for 1 second since the hospital. That should not have affected me. It did. I looked away first. Later that evening, while Noah explored every inch of the place like he was trying to believe it was real, I found something that stopped me cold. On Ethan's desk, half tucked beneath a leather portfolio, was a faded ferry ticket from Charleston. The same route. The same date range. My breath caught before I could stop it. I picked it up with shaking fingers. He had kept it. After all these years, he had kept it. For 1 weak second, the room blurred into a different life. Salt air. Summer heat. Ethan laughing against my mouth before either of us understood what his name would cost me. Then heels clicked against marble behind me. I set the ticket down just as Vanessa's voice cut through the room, cool and immaculate. I did not realize temporary situations came with their own floor now. I turned. She stood at the threshold in a fitted cream dress, looking like this place had been built to flatter her. My pulse hardened instantly. Ethan appeared a second later, his face going flat in that dangerous way I was starting to recognize. Vanessa smiled at me like I was the inconvenience and said, "You should not read too much into objects people keep. Men like Ethan are sentimental about history. Not always about the women in it." I should have ignored her. I should have walked away. Instead I heard myself ask the one thing I did not want to care about. Then why are you here? Vanessa's smile sharpened. Because in 15 minutes, Ethan and I have a media strategy meeting. And whether you like it or not, Claire, the whole city is about to decide what role you play in his life. The truth hit me from a printer tray. Not from Ethan. Not from fate. From a single sheet of paper left face down on a console table outside his study like my life was just another file in motion. I should have walked past it. I did not. Vanessa had just swept into the conference room with 2 men in suits, and Ethan had followed without looking at me once. That alone had been enough to light every old wound on fire. So when I saw the lab envelope stamped confidential, I picked it up. My hands were already cold before I opened it. Noah Bennett. Paternity probability, 99.99%. For 1 second, the whole penthouse went soundless. Then the silence cracked open inside my chest. Ethan knew. He knew, and he had said nothing. He had looked me in the face all day, moved my son into his home, let Vanessa sneer at me, and still kept this in his pocket like a weapon he had not decided when to use. I heard footsteps behind me and turned so fast the paper shook in my hand. Ethan stopped short when he saw it. Not guilty. Not shocked. Just tight. Controlled. Claire. I laughed, and the sound came out thin and ugly. How long? His eyes flicked to the report, then back to me. An hour. An hour? I stepped back before he could come closer. An hour of knowing Noah is your son, and you still let me stand here like a fool while you decided what to do with us. His jaw locked. I was securing legal protections. That word hit like a slap. Protections? I shot back. For who? Me? Or the heir your family can finally stamp a name on? He took one step forward. For Noah. And for you, whether you believe that or not. I wanted to believe nothing he said. That should have been easy. It was not. That made me angrier. Do not do that, I said. Do not stand there and act like hiding this was some noble sacrifice. Ethan's voice dropped lower. Harder. If I had told you before the paperwork was locked down, half my family would already be moving against him. Maybe that was true. Maybe it was not. I did not care. Not in that moment. In that moment, all I could hear was the old ache rising back to life. He knew. And he still kept me outside the truth. Pack Noah's things, I said, already turning away. We are leaving. Ethan caught my wrist before I took 2 steps. Not rough. Firm. Final. I looked down at his hand, then up at his face, and whatever he saw in mine made him let go. Good. Let him. I walked to Noah's room on legs that did not feel steady, grabbed the first things I could find, and fought to keep my breathing even. Behind me, Ethan's voice followed, lower now, urgent in a way I had never heard from him before. Claire, if you walk out tonight without security, you will walk straight into their hands. I did not turn around. I did not trust myself to. Because the worst part was not that the DNA test had confirmed everything. The worst part was that I no longer knew whether Ethan was the man trying to save my son, or the first one trying to claim him. I did leave. Not because I thought Ethan was wrong about the danger. Because I could not breathe another minute inside a world where every truth came to me late and every door locked from his side. I took Noah before dawn, kept the route messy, changed cabs twice, and ended up at the only place in Charleston that had ever felt honest. Megan Foster's little rental on Maple Street. She opened the door in flannel pants and stared at me, then at Noah, then at the overnight bag hanging off my shoulder. Claire, she said softly, what happened now? I wanted to say nothing. I wanted to say everything. Instead I stepped inside and whispered, I need one day. Megan did not ask twice. She made Noah toast, pulled extra blankets from the hall closet, and acted like my life had not just blown open in front of half the city. That kindness almost undid me more than cruelty ever had. By noon, I started to believe maybe I had bought us a few quiet hours. Then the knock came. Not hard. Not rude. That made it worse. Megan cracked the door and glanced back at me with a face I did not like at all. Claire, she murmured, there is a man here asking about a school donation drive. He knows your name. Ice slid straight through me. I stepped into the hall and saw him through the screen door. Tall. Silver tie. Perfect manners. He smiled like men do when they think civility makes them harmless. Ms. Bennett, he said. I am Graham Calloway. My hand tightened on the doorframe. Another Calloway. Of course. You have the wrong house. Graham's smile held. I do not think I do. I only want to discuss what is best for the boy. The boy. Not Noah. Not my son. My whole body went rigid. Get off this porch. He dipped his chin like I had confirmed something useful. You should be careful who you trust. Ethan tends to secure assets before he secures people. Then he handed Megan a card and walked away without hurry, like the damage mattered more than the conversation. I stood there shaking with fury, because the worst part was not what Graham said. It was that it sounded close enough to my fear to hurt. By late afternoon, Noah was quiet in a way I knew too well. Too pale. Too still. Stress always went for his breathing first. He sat on Megan's couch trying to act fine, one hand on his chest. Mom, it is just tight a little. Panic hit me so hard my vision blurred. I was already reaching for his inhaler when there was another knock at the door. This time I did not have to guess. Ethan stood on the porch, dark coat, hard eyes, controlled anger. He looked past me once and saw Noah on the couch. Everything in his face changed direction at once. Move, he said. Not cold. Not cruel. Urgent. I should have slammed the door. I should have told him to go to hell. Instead I stepped aside, because Noah's breathing had gone thin, and Ethan was already on his phone calling for a doctor before I could decide whether I hated him more for being right, or for being the only one I could let in. By the time Noah's breathing steadied, the sky outside the hospital windows had gone black. Megan had gone home hours ago. The doctor had called it a stress-triggered flare, nothing life-threatening if he rested, but that word if kept scraping at me anyway. I sat beside Noah's bed with one hand around his small wrist like I could hold him here by force. Ethan stood near the window, jacket off, tie loosened, phone silent for once. He had been there through the breathing treatment, through the tests, through every minute I had wanted to scream and every minute I had nearly broken. I should have told him to leave the second Noah stabilized. I did not. That was the first thing I hated. The second was the way Noah looked at him when he woke up around midnight. Not scared. Not exactly. Curious. Hopeful in that careful, child-sized way that made my chest ache. You stayed, Noah whispered, voice rough from the mask. Ethan stepped closer, slow enough not to spook him. I said you were safe. Noah blinked at him, then at me, then back again. Can I ask something? Ethan's face gave nothing away. Yes. Noah swallowed. Are you my dad? The room stopped. My whole body went rigid so fast it hurt. Ethan looked at Noah for one long second, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I saw him without armor. Not soft. Just stripped down to something honest and dangerous. He crouched beside the bed and rested one hand on the rail, not on Noah, like he knew trust had to be invited. I am somebody who is going to protect you, he said quietly. Noah frowned. That is not the same answer. A broken laugh almost escaped me. Even now, my son cut straight to the center. Ethan did not smile. No, he said. It is not. Then he added, lower, steadier, but it is the answer I can promise tonight. Noah studied him, then gave one sleepy nod like he had accepted a temporary truth. 10 minutes later, he was asleep again, one hand curled around the blanket, the other still near the rail where Ethan had been. I watched Ethan pull a chair to the bedside instead of taking the couch across the room. You do not have to do that, I whispered. He did not look at me. Yes, I do. Hours passed in hospital light and machine hum. I should have felt relieved seeing him there. Instead I felt something more frightening. Noah trusted him too easily. Ethan fit at that bedside too naturally. And as I watched the two of them under that thin blue blanket and that dim hallway glow, one brutal thought kept cutting through me. The more Noah started to need him, the easier it would be for me to lose him. By morning, I had slept maybe 20 minutes in a plastic chair and trusted no one, least of all myself. Noah was stable. That should have been enough. It was not. He was still asleep when Ethan stepped into the hallway outside the hospital room and closed the door behind him with that quiet, deliberate control I had started to hate on instinct. My security team traced Graham's visit, he said. No warm-up. No softness. He knew exactly where you went. That means somebody is feeding information from inside old channels. Not just current ones. I folded my arms, too tired to pretend calm. Say what you mean. Ethan held my gaze. I do not think Charleston was the first time someone cut us off from each other. For 1 second, all I could hear was blood moving in my ears. He pulled out his phone and showed me 2 screens. One was an archive request tied to an email account I had used 7 years ago. The other was a voicemail record flagged as redirected before delivery. These were intercepted, he said. Not deleted. Rerouted. I stared at the timestamps. Dates from the summer I had begged the universe for one reply. My throat went tight. You are telling me somebody touched my messages? Ethan's jaw hardened. I am telling you I am starting to think you really did right. And I never saw any of it. That should have felt like relief. It felt like grief with sharper edges. Starting to think? I shot back. You needed records to believe me? Ethan did not defend himself. That made it worse. I need proof if I am going to expose whoever did it. Proof. Always proof. Always strategy. I looked through the glass panel into Noah's room and saw my son sleeping with one hand curled under his cheek, innocent in a story built by liars with money. Who? I asked. Ethan's voice dropped. The rerouting trail touches an old media operations server once managed through Whitmore Communications. My stomach dropped. Vanessa. Or her mother. Or both. Before I could force the name out loud, my phone buzzed in my coat pocket. Unknown number. I should have ignored it. I answered anyway. A woman's polished voice slid through the line like silk over a knife. Claire, you might want to see what is trending before Noah grows up old enough to read it himself. The call ended. My hands went cold before I even opened the link she had sent. There I was. My face. Noah's face blurred beside mine. And under it, one vicious line in bold black letters. Desperate waitress traps Calloway Heir with mystery child. I looked up at Ethan, fury and humiliation hitting at once. Your world still knows exactly how to use my name against me, I said. And the worst part was the headline was not the only thing that had just changed. For the first time in 7 years, I had to consider something even more dangerous than Ethan abandoning me. Someone might have made sure he did. The next time they came for my son, they did it in daylight, under a banner that said science fair like cruelty needed a school-friendly font. Noah had begged to go. I finished the volcano, he told me that morning, holding the cardboard base with both hands like it mattered more than the headlines, more than the whispers, more than the men in suits who kept turning his life into a file. I almost said no. I should have. But he was 7, and I was tired of letting fear be the loudest thing in the room. So I took him. The gym smelled like glue sticks, coffee, and polished floors. Normal. Almost. Then the murmurs started. Low at first. Then less low. A woman by the raffle table glanced at me, leaned toward another parent, and said it just loud enough. That is her. The one with the billionaire scandal kid. Heat hit my face so fast I tasted metal. Noah kept walking beside me with his project in his arms, pretending not to hear. That hurt more than if he had cried. I set up his display, adjusted the little paper label, and told myself to get through 1 hour. 1 hour. That was all. Then a man near the judge's table laughed under his breath and said, "Must be nice. Some bastards get trust funds before spelling tests." The word landed like a slap. Noah froze beside me. I did not even think. I turned so fast the chair legs scraped the floor. Do not you ever say that around my son again. The gym went silent. Too silent. The man raised both hands like I was the problem now. Hey, I am just saying what everybody is thinking. Everybody. There was the trick. Make cruelty sound communal. Make shame sound deserved. Noah's fingers started crushing the edge of his trifold board, and I saw the panic rising in him before he said a single word. Mom, I want to go. I bent toward him, trying to block out the room, trying to make my voice steady. Look at me, baby. You did nothing wrong. But my own chest had gone tight. The air felt sharp. The whispers had already started again. Then a different silence moved across the gym. Controlled. Immediate. The kind that only comes when power enters a room and everyone knows it. Ethan crossed the floor in a dark coat, 2 steps behind him a pair of legal staff I recognized from the hospital. He did not look at me first. He looked straight at the man by the judge's table. Repeat it, he said. Quiet. Dead calm. The man actually blinked. I did not mean, no, Ethan cut in. Repeat what you called him. Nobody breathed. Nobody moved. Ethan finally turned to Noah, crouched just enough to bring himself level, and set one hand on the edge of the science table, not touching him, just anchoring the space around him. Then he looked back up at the room and said, clear enough for every parent, every teacher, every coward in that gym to hear, that boy is under my protection. Anyone who humiliates him again can answer to my attorneys by noon. It should not have mattered the way it did. But it did. God, it did. Because for the first time, someone with power had stepped into my shame and made it expensive. Ethan straightened and held out a hand toward Noah's crooked little volcano. Would you like me to see how it works? Noah looked at me first. Always me. I nodded once, because my throat was too tight for words. Noah pressed the button. Red foam bubbled up the paper cone, messy and uneven and perfect. Ethan watched it like it was the most serious thing in the room. Impressive, he said. Noah gave the smallest smile. My heart cracked on contact. This was the problem. Not Ethan's money. Not even his family. It was this. The way Noah softened when Ethan stood beside him. The way some broken part of me did too. I should have been able to live inside that relief for one clean second. I almost did. Then I saw her. Vanessa. Standing just beyond the doorway in a pale coat, watching us like she had already measured the damage. Ethan followed my gaze, and something in his face hardened again. The moment split in two. Protection on one side. His world on the other. And I knew, even before she started walking toward us, that whatever Ethan had just given Noah in public, someone was about to make me pay for it in private. The first time Noah laughed without looking over his shoulder first, it happened by the water. Ethan had taken us down to the harbor the morning after the science fair, saying Noah needed one day that did not smell like courtrooms and headlines. I should have refused. Instead, I watched my son race ahead along the boardwalk with a paper cup of fries in one hand and sea wind in his hair, and for 20 whole minutes, nobody stared at us like we were a scandal. Ethan walked beside me in silence, hands in his coat pockets, dark eyes tracking Noah without making it obvious. He likes the fairies, he said. I almost laughed at the understatement. Noah had been talking about them for 10 straight minutes. He likes anything that moves, I said. Ethan glanced at me then, and something old and dangerous shifted between us. You used to. Charleston flashed through me so fast it hurt. I looked away first. That was a different life. Noah ran back to us holding a postcard rack souvenir he had somehow talked a vendor into showing him for free. Can we get one? He asked. Ethan reached for his wallet before I could answer. I hated how natural that looked. I hated even more that Noah did not hesitate to accept it. Later, we sat on a bench facing the water while Noah fed gulls with stolen pieces of his own lunch. For one reckless minute, the three of us looked like a family that had arrived on purpose. Ethan leaned his forearms on his knees and spoke without looking at me. About 7 years ago, my whole body tightened, but I did not stop him. I should have seen sooner that something was wrong, he said. I should have looked harder. The apology was not complete. Not clean. But it was the closest thing he had given me, and God help me, part of me felt it. That was when I made the mistake. I let myself soften. Just enough to breathe beside him without armor. Just enough to imagine what Noah might have had if truth had not been tampered with by rich, elegant liars. Then Ethan's phone buzzed on the bench between us. He stood to answer it, stepping a few feet away for privacy. I should have kept watching Noah. I did not. The screen lit up before it locked, and one heading caught my eye like a knife. Emergency temporary custody filing. My blood went cold so fast I thought I might actually be sick. I picked up the phone before I could stop myself. Legal language. Protective measures. Minor child. Placement. Ethan returned just as I set it back down. He saw my face and went still. Claire. I stood up so fast the bench scraped. Noah looked over from the railing, smiling at first, until he saw me. You are filing for custody? I asked. My voice came out low. Dead. Ethan's jaw tightened. It is not what you think. I laughed once, and the sound broke on the way out. That is exactly what men say right before they try to take something. Noah was already walking back toward us, confusion replacing his smile. Ethan lowered his voice. Graham is preparing a legal move. This filing blocks him. No, I snapped. This filing blocks me. Ethan took one step closer. I am trying to keep Noah from being used by the rest of them. I backed away before he could get any nearer. And what do you call this? Noah stopped between us, small and silent and hearing too much again. That was the part that killed every soft thing before it had time to live. Ethan looked at him, then at me, and for the first time all morning, the harbor did not feel open. It felt trapped. Because the man who had just bought my son a postcard and almost apologized for losing us was also standing in front of emergency custody papers with my child's name on them. And I no longer knew whether the real danger was Ethan's family, or Ethan with a legal reason to keep Noah close. By the time the legal papers hit my hands, I understood something ugly. Ethan had not been lying at the harbor. He had just told the truth in the language of his world, and in his world, truth still arrived wrapped in filings, seals, and signatures that could take a child away from his mother before anyone called it theft. We were back at the penthouse when his attorney arrived. Dark suit. Leather briefcase. Voice polished flat. Ms. Bennett, Graham Calloway has filed an emergency petition requesting judicial review of Noah's guardianship status due to succession risk. Succession risk. That was what they had reduced my son to now. Ethan stood across the room, silent, watching me read. He is using the inheritance issue to force court supervision, the attorney continued. Mr. Calloway's temporary filing is the only thing preventing Graham from trying to place Noah under a neutral trust administrator. I looked up so fast the pages shook. A neutral what? Ethan answered this time. A court-appointed structure. Controlled access. Financial oversight. Security management. My pulse thudded harder with every word. You mean strangers, I said. You mean people in offices deciding when I get to see my own child. Ethan's face tightened. I mean Graham is trying to make Noah a piece on the board before the inheritance hearing. I wanted to scream. At Graham. At Ethan. At every man with a last name big enough to turn motherhood into a legal category. Noah sat curled into one end of the couch with a blanket around his shoulders, trying to look busy with a tablet that had gone dark in his lap 10 minutes ago. He was hearing enough. Always enough. I lowered my voice by force. And your answer is what? Beat him to it? Ethan did not flinch. My answer is to keep Graham from touching him first. I laughed once, because the alternative was breaking. That is the problem, Ethan. Every version of protection in your world still starts with someone touching what is mine. The attorney shifted, uncomfortable now. Good. Let him be. Ethan stepped closer, not near enough to crowd me, near enough to make the air feel chosen. Claire. Listen to me. The judge issued a temporary order. Until the first hearing, Noah has to remain in a secured residence under my supervision or Graham can argue active instability. The room blurred around the edges. Under your supervision, I repeated. The words came out numb. You hear how that sounds, right? Ethan's voice dropped. I know exactly how it sounds. Then why does it still feel like I am losing? He had no answer fast enough to save either of us from the truth of that question. Noah looked up from the couch then, small and pale and trying so hard not to be scared that it nearly split me open. Mom, he asked quietly, am I in trouble? I crossed the room in 2 steps and knelt in front of him. No, baby. Never. None of this is your fault. He nodded, but he did not believe me. Or maybe he believed me and still knew fault had nothing to do with power. That was worse. Ethan sent the attorney out with a glance. The door shut. The penthouse went silent again. Not peaceful. Never peaceful. Just expensive and trapped. I stayed kneeling in front of Noah until he leaned into me, blanket and all, and I wrapped both arms around him like the law could be kept out by pressure alone. Over his shoulder, I saw Ethan still standing there, still steady, still the only reason Graham had not already pushed farther. That was the trap. I needed him. I hated that I needed him. And somewhere between those two truths, my son had just become a case. When Noah finally drifted off against me, Ethan spoke so quietly I almost wished I had not heard him. The hearing is in 48 hours. I closed my eyes. 48 hours. 48 hours until a courtroom decided where my child slept. 48 hours until I had to stand beside the man I did not fully trust to stop the men I trusted even less. And for the first time since the hospital, the danger was not just outside the door anymore. It had a date. A judge. And my son's name printed across the top. The morning after the temporary order, I stopped running in circles and finally did the one thing I should have done sooner. I cornered Ethan in his study, shut the door behind me, and put Noah's custody papers on the desk between us like a challenge. No strategy. No lawyer language. No half-truths, I said. You tell me exactly what you filed and why. Ethan did not sit. He stood behind the desk in a white shirt with the sleeves rolled once, looking tired for the first time in days. That should not have mattered to me. It did. Graham filed first, he said. Not for custody in name. For judicial review of guardianship under succession risk. If I did nothing, the court could place Noah under an outside administrator while they sorted out inheritance claims. I stared at him, trying to hear the content and not just the control in his voice. So you filed to stop him? Ethan nodded once. Temporary custody protection tied to residence security. It keeps Graham from separating Noah from both of us before the hearing. Both of us. The words caught in me harder than they should have. Then why did it feel like you were moving me out of the way? He held my gaze. Because every tool I have looks like a weapon to you. That landed because it was true, and I hated him a little for saying it out loud. For a second, neither of us moved. The room felt too small for 7 lost years and 1 sleeping child down the hall. Then Ethan reached into a locked drawer and pulled out a slim file. There is something else. My whole body tightened again. Of course there was. He opened the file and spread out printed records. Email routing logs. Call records. An old archived communication request from a Charleston service provider. I looked down and my breath caught. My old email. My old number. Dates from the summer I was pregnant. These were never delivered to me, Ethan said quietly. They were intercepted. Redirected before they reached my office or personal line. I picked up one page with shaking fingers. There it was. My message timestamp. The call I made from a pay phone outside the grocery store when I had exactly $6 left and still believed one more try might save us. No, I whispered. That is not possible. Ethan's voice dropped lower. I thought you disappeared. You thought I left. Claire, somebody made sure both of us believed exactly the wrong thing. Grief hit strange when it came late. Not soft. Sharp. I sat down without meaning to. All those nights I spent hating him. All those years he had maybe hated me back for the same lie. Who? I asked, because that was the only word my mouth still knew how to make. Ethan slid one final page toward me. A media operations server log. Whitmore Communications. The name blurred for a second before it settled into focus. My pulse went cold. Vanessa. Her mother. Their world. Their reach. I looked up at Ethan, and for the first time since this started, my fear shifted shape. You are saying we were set up? Ethan did not answer right away. He did not need to. The silence did it for him. Because if he was telling the truth, then the worst thing between us was no longer the years we lost. It was the person who had stolen them on purpose. The proof was not hidden in some dramatic vault. It was buried in ordinary things. Time stamps. Forwarding logs. A scanned memo with the Whitmore letterhead on top and my life underneath it, like I had once been a scheduling problem somebody elegant decided to solve. Ethan spread the files across his study table while I stood on the other side trying not to shake. Walk me through it, I said. My voice sounded calmer than I felt. Ethan tapped one page, then another. Your email was redirected through an old media server contracted by my family during the Charleston merger. He slid a printed transcript closer. And this was sent from a proxy account linked to Lydia Whitmore. I looked down. My stomach dropped. It was a breakup message. Cruel. Final. Written in Ethan's name. I had read those words 7 years ago and believed every one of them. No, I whispered. She wrote this. Ethan's jaw tightened. Yes. The room went still in the ugliest way. Not because I doubted it anymore. Because I did not. Beat by beat, it all lined up. The calls I made that never reached him. The letter that vanished. The message that told me he had moved on, that I had embarrassed him, that I should never contact him again. Lydia had not just interfered. She had authored the wound. I pressed a hand to the table to steady myself. Why? Ethan's answer came flat. Because Whitmore wanted control of public image, succession planning, and eventually me. I laughed once, but there was no humor in it. So your future mother-in-law erased me before I could become inconvenient. Ethan's eyes hardened. She was never going to be family. Before I could answer, he slid over one final report. Vanessa's name. Internal notes. Meeting dates. Not full involvement. Not direct authorship. But awareness. Silence. She knew enough to suspect what her mother did, Ethan said. And she never told me. That one hurt differently. Cleaner. Colder. Because it turned every smug look Vanessa had given me into something worse than arrogance. She had not just judged me. She had stood on stolen ground and called it class. I looked up at Ethan then, and for one dangerous second, grief made space for relief. He had not abandoned me. He had been cut off too. But relief did not last. It never did. Do not look at me like this fixes it, I said. Ethan went still. Claire. I stepped back from the table before the ache could turn into something softer. You being innocent is not the same as you being forgiven. His face changed then. Not defensive. Not angry. Hit. Good. Let it hit. Because the truth had just cleared one grave between us and opened another. Lydia Whitmore may have stolen our past. But Ethan still let 7 years pass without finding me. And now I had to decide which hurt was worse. I did not plan to tell Ethan everything. I planned to stay angry. Anger was clean. Useful. It kept me upright. But that night, with Noah asleep down the hall and the city lights burning cold against the penthouse glass, Ethan stood in front of me looking guilty in a way I had never seen before, and the words came anyway. "You want to know what those 7 years looked like?" I asked. My voice was steady. That was the only mercy I gave either of us. They looked like me throwing up in a gas station bathroom before a diner's shift because I could not afford to miss work. They looked like counting quarters for prenatal vitamins and pretending I was not scared every time Noah got sick. They looked like writing your name on a hospital form and then crossing it out because I could not stand the humiliation of leaving that space empty. Ethan did not move. Did not interrupt. Good. Let him hear all of it. I worked 2 jobs until I could not. I moved when rent climbed. I smiled at people who thought pity was kindness. I gave birth without anyone holding my hand except a nurse on her 3rd double shift. So no, Ethan. Finding out you did not leave on purpose does not magically erase what it cost me to survive like you did. For the first time since I met him again, Ethan looked stripped of all the things money usually gave him. "I know," he said quietly. "Or at least I know enough to be ashamed of what I did not see." He dragged one hand across his jaw, the gesture sharp with restraint. "I let my family's machine tell me what mattered. I was young, arrogant, and too convinced that if something truly mattered, it would make its way back to me." His laugh was short and bitter. "You did matter. I just failed before I even understood how completely. I should have enjoyed that. I did not. It hurt too much for victory." Ethan took one step closer, careful now, like he finally understood rushing me would break whatever thin bridge had formed between us. "I am not asking you to forgive me tonight," he said. "And I am not asking for anything romantic. I have no right to that." He held my gaze, and this time there was no strategy in it. No filing. No family. Just a man standing in the wreckage of his own lost years. "I am asking for the chance to be Noah's father. Properly. Consistently. And if there is anything left for us after that, it has to be earned." My throat tightened before I could stop it. That was the problem with honest words. They went deeper than lies. I folded my arms anyway, because my heart was not some dramatic fool that could run back just because the truth finally showed up late. "Step by step," I said. "You do not get to jump from stranger to father to anything else. Not with me. Not with Noah. My heart does not work that fast anymore." Ethan nodded once. No argument. No pressure. Then step by step. I held out my hand before I could overthink it. Not love. Not surrender. Terms. He looked at it for one long second, then took it carefully, like even this much trust had weight. It did. Because for the first time since the hospital, we were not standing across from each other as enemies or ghosts. We were standing there as 2 people trying to raise the same child. And that fragile peace might have held a little longer if Ethan's phone had not lit up on the table a second later with the one name that could still turn every room cold. Grandfather. Grandfather did not waste time with hello. By 9 the next morning, his summons had already turned into a room full of old money and newer cruelty. Ethan took me with him to the Calloway estate because, in his words, they do not get to discuss Noah without us in the room. That should have sounded protective. It sounded like war. The dining room looked less like a family home and more like a museum built by people who mistook inheritance for character. Portraits. Silver. Silence sharpened by judgment. Noah was upstairs with Teresa and 2 security officers, far from the room where men in tailored suits were about to decide what his life was worth. Grandfather Calloway sat at the head of the table, elegant and cold, his cane resting beside him like punctuation. He looked at me once, then at Ethan. "The gala remains on schedule," he said. And the boy will be presented. My whole body locked. Presented. Not introduced. Not protected. Displayed. No, I said before Ethan could answer. Every eye in the room shifted to me like I had forgotten my place. Good. Let them choke on it. Grandfather's mouth barely moved. This is not your decision, Ms. Bennett. Heat rose so fast behind my ribs it almost felt clean. It is absolutely my decision if you're talking about my son. A low murmur moved around the table. Graham sat 2 seats down, wearing the kind of mild expression men use when they are enjoying damage they can deny later. With respect, he said, the child's identity affects the future of the family. I turned toward him. His name is Noah. Try using it. Ethan had been silent until then, standing at my shoulder like a wall with a heartbeat. Now he moved. One hand flattened on the back of the chair beside me. Not touching me. Choosing a side anyway. He will not be paraded through a gala for leverage, Ethan said. Grandfather's eyes hardened. Leverage? He is the surviving heir. Ethan did not blink. He is a 7-year-old boy. The room went still. Not shocked. Calculating. Because this was the first time Ethan had said it in front of all of them. Not asset. Not issue. Boy. Grandfather leaned back slowly. You are letting sentiment cloud succession. Ethan's voice dropped lower. Colder. And you are confusing succession with ownership. I should not have felt that in my chest. I did. That was the danger now. Not just that Ethan could protect Noah. That he was starting to sound like a man I could believe. Grandfather tapped his cane once against the floor. The gala proceeds. If you will not present the child properly, the family will make other arrangements. The threat was dressed in silk, but it was still a threat. My pulse kicked hard. Ethan stepped fully beside me then, shoulder to shoulder, no distance left to misread. Try, he said. One word. Flat. Final. Grandfather's gaze moved from him to me and back again, and I knew the line had just shifted. This was no longer only about Noah's last name. It was about whether Ethan would choose his family's empire or stand here with us when the cost became real. And by the way Grandfather smiled after that, I knew he was already preparing the bill. Vanessa chose her timing the way people like her always did. Not when the room was honest. When it was useful. She arrived at the penthouse that evening with 2 attorneys, one image consultant, and the kind of smile women wear when they think the ending still belongs to them. I was halfway down the hall with Noah's sketchbook in my hand when I heard her voice carry from Ethan's office. This stops tonight, she said. The board needs stability before the gala, and the press needs a narrative they can digest. You announce our engagement. We present a united front. The scandal cools. The family recovers. I stopped cold outside the half-open door. Inside, Ethan stood at the far end of the room in a dark suit, shoulders set, expression empty in that dangerous way I knew too well now. Vanessa stepped closer like she still believed proximity was power. You know I make sense, she said. A woman like Claire will never survive this world. Let me fix what she broke. Heat flashed through me so fast I almost walked in and tore the sentence apart with my bare hands. I did not have to. Ethan answered first. You are mistaken about 2 things. His voice was low. Flat. Final. Vanessa's smile faltered. Ethan did not move toward her. He did not need to. Claire did not break anything, he said. And there is no engagement to announce. Silence hit the room so hard I felt it through the doorway. One of the attorneys shifted. Vanessa went white, then cold. You are throwing away years of planning for her? Ethan's gaze did not change. I am ending years of manipulation because of you. That landed. Vanessa laughed once, brittle and ugly. Because of me? Please. I did not forge the message. My mother did what had to be done. I just chose not to correct a problem that benefited everyone. My fingers tightened on the sketchbook until the corners bent. There it was. Not full innocence. Not even close. Ethan's face went still in a way that made every other person in the room suddenly look underdressed for the moment. You knew, he said. Vanessa lifted her chin. I knew enough. Ethan crossed to the desk, opened a folder, and slid a document toward her without looking away. Then read the termination notices. Every Whitmore advisory contract tied to Calloway Holdings ends tonight. Vanessa stared at him. You cannot be serious. Watch me. He turned to the attorneys next. And for the record, any personal association between me and Vanessa Whitmore is over. Permanently. One of the lawyers cleared his throat. Mr. Calloway, the board may interpret this as instability. Ethan did not even blink. Then let them update their interpretation. That was when he saw me in the doorway. Just for a second, the room changed. Not softer. Clearer. Vanessa followed his gaze and realized I had heard enough. Her mouth tightened with something mean and almost desperate. Do not look so pleased, Claire. Men make dramatic choices all the time. It does not mean they keep them. Maybe once, that would have shattered me. Tonight, it did not. Because Ethan did not look at her when he answered. He looked at me. This one stays. The words hit harder than they should have. Hard enough that I forgot how to breathe for one dangerous second. Vanessa walked out 3 minutes later with her heels striking the floor like a countdown she no longer controlled. The door shut behind her. The room emptied. And for the first time since this nightmare began, one thing stood in the open with no room left to hide. Ethan had finally chosen a side. The problem was, I had no idea what that choice was going to cost him next. We lost Noah in the space between one breath and the next. I found out because his room was too quiet. No cartoon noise. No off-key humming. Just an untouched glass of water on the nightstand and the blanket folded back like he had climbed out of it carefully, trying not to wake anyone. My whole body went cold before my mind caught up. Noah? I called once, then louder. Nothing. By the time I hit the hallway, Ethan was already there, his face changing the second he saw mine. He is not in his room. That was all I had to say. We searched the penthouse first. Fast. Closets. Guest rooms. The media room. The private elevator logs. Nothing. Every second stretched sharp enough to cut. Then Teresa ran in from the security desk holding a tablet with one hand and looking pale. He used the service elevator 20 minutes ago, she said. One of the guards thought he was with staff. My stomach dropped so hard I had to brace myself against the wall. Ethan took the tablet, scanned the screen, and turned to his head of security with a voice that could have frozen fire. Lock down the building. Check every camera feed from the last 30 minutes. Now. I should have been able to stay steady. I should have been the calm mother in the center of the storm. Instead, all I could hear was every cruel word Noah had absorbed over the last week. Heir. Scandal. Problem. Too much. Ethan was already moving, code in hand, phone at his ear, issuing orders with brutal precision. He would not go far, he said, half to himself, half to me. He would go somewhere familiar. And suddenly I knew. The old waterfront overlook. The place where he had watched the ferries and smiled like the world was not hunting him yet. We found him sitting on a bench with his knees pulled up, staring at the water like it might explain something adults kept breaking. I was out of the car before it fully stopped. Noah. He turned, and the look on his face almost shattered me. Not rebellion. Guilt. I am sorry, he whispered when I reached him. I heard the lawyers. I heard them say Heir again. I thought maybe if I was not here, everybody would stop fighting. Ethan stopped a few feet away and went still in a way I had never seen before. Stripped. Human. He did not rush Noah. He walked the last steps slowly, then lowered himself until he was eye level with him. "Listen to me," he said, voice low and steady. "You matter because you are Noah. Not because of a headline. Not because of a last name. Not because of anything those people want." Noah looked at him, eyes wet and confused. "Then why is everybody mad?" Ethan took that hit without flinching. "Because adults can be selfish. And because I should have protected you from more of this sooner. That one landed on me too." Noah swallowed hard. "Are you my dad for real?" The wind off the water cut through my coat, but I barely felt it. Ethan did not look away. "Yes," he said. No strategy. No delay. No lawyer words. Just yes. Noah stared at him for one long second, then leaned forward and pressed into his chest like he had been holding that question alone for too long. I stood there with my hands shaking and my heart doing something far more dangerous than breaking. It was softening. Because the way Ethan held our son was not ownership. It was reverence. And for the first time, I saw what this could become if the world would just leave us alone long enough. That was when Ethan looked up at me over Noah's shoulder, and everything unspoken between us shifted again. Not solved. Not safe. But closer. Closer than I had let us be in years. And that was exactly why, later that night, when Noah finally slept and the penthouse went quiet, I knew Ethan and I had only one kind of danger left to face. The kind with no lawyers in it at all. That night, the penthouse felt too quiet for how much had changed. Noah was finally asleep, one arm wrapped around the stuffed shark Ethan had somehow found in the gift shop after the waterfront. I stood for a long time in the doorway of his room, watching his breathing, waiting for the panic in my chest to settle into something less sharp. It did not. When I turned, Ethan was at the far end of the hall, leaning one shoulder against the wall like he had been standing there a while and knew better than to interrupt. "He is out cold," he said softly. I nodded. "He has had a long week." The understatement almost made me laugh. Instead, I followed Ethan to the terrace because the glass and the city lights felt easier than walls. The air was cool. High up enough to make everything below look smaller than it was. For a minute, neither of us spoke. Then Ethan reached into his coat pocket and held something out to me. A ferry ticket. Worn at the edges. Charleston. My breath caught before I could stop it. "You kept it," I said. Ethan looked at the water in the distance instead of at me. I kept a lot of things I told myself did not matter. That landed deep. Too deep. I turned the ticket over in my fingers, and suddenly I was back there. Salt in the air. Summer heat on my skin. The boy he had been before power hardened around him. "I used to hate that place after you," I admitted. It felt like proof I had imagined the best part of my life. Ethan finally looked at me then, and there was no defense left in his face. "You did not imagine it. I just failed to protect it." The honesty in that hurt worse than excuses ever could. I should have stepped back. I did not. Ethan took one slow step closer, careful enough to leave me room to leave. "Claire," he said, low and steady, "I do not expect you to trust this all at once. I know what I cost you. But I have never stopped carrying the part of me that was yours before all of this." My pulse turned traitor. I should have hated how much I wanted to believe him. Instead I stood there under the wind and the city lights and the wreckage of years, feeling everything old and dangerous come back to life at once. "That is the problem," I whispered. "I do believe part of it." Ethan's gaze dropped to my mouth for half a second, then rose again, asking without pushing. The distance between us changed. Not by much. Enough. If I moved 1 inch forward, it would happen. If he moved 1 inch forward, I might let it. That was the truth I was not ready for. Not after court papers. Not before the gala. Not while our son was sleeping down the hall and the world still had its hands all over our lives. So I stepped back first. The motion hurt more than it should have. Not yet, I said, and my voice came out quieter than I meant it to. Ethan closed his eyes once, brief and controlled, then nodded. No anger. No pressure. Not yet, he repeated. The gentleness of that almost undid me anyway. I clutched the ferry ticket tighter, then handed it back before I could start keeping his history for him. Tomorrow is the gala, I said. And your family will come for Noah harder than ever. Ethan's face changed at once. Softer things gone. Steel back in place. Then tomorrow, he said, they find out what I am willing to burn down. The gala looked exactly the way power wanted to look when it expected obedience. Crystal. Black silk. Gold light spilled across marble floors polished so clean I could see my own hesitation staring back at me. I wore a dark blue dress Teresa chose because she said it made me look impossible to erase. I needed that tonight. Noah was not with us. Ethan had refused to bring him into the ballroom, and for once I agreed without a fight. Let them stare at me instead. Let them try. The second I stepped through the doors on Ethan's arm, the room shifted. Heads turned. Conversations thinned. Women in diamonds looked me over with the kind of smile that passed for breeding in places like this. I could almost hear what they were thinking. Too plain. Too real. Too late. Ethan felt it too. His hand stayed firm at my back, not possessive, just steady. You do not owe this room a single apology, he said under his breath. I should have thanked him. Instead I kept my chin up and walked straight into the fire. It started at the edge of the ballroom and spread fast. Graham intercepted us near the center display where a blown-up family tree stood framed in silver like bloodlines were sacred just because rich people printed them large enough. He lifted a champagne glass and smiled that mild, poisonous smile. Quite an entrance, he said. Though I imagine this all feels new to someone with your background. I stopped in front of him before Ethan could say what you mean. Graham's eyes flicked over me, amused. I mean, some women are very determined when they find the right family to attach themselves to. There it was. Not subtle. Not clean. Just expensive humiliation in a tuxedo. A few people nearby pretended not to listen while leaning in anyway. My face burned. My spine did not bend. And some men, I said, hide greed behind manners because they are too weak to say out loud they want a child's inheritance. The air changed. Graham's smile thinned. Good. Let him feel seen. But he was not done. Of course he was not. He gestured toward. The trustees gathered near the stage. This is not about inheritance. It is about stability. The board simply wants assurance the boy will be raised with the structure his position requires. Structure. Another elegant word that really meant take him from me. One of the trustees stepped closer and cleared his throat. A private trust residence could ensure educational continuity, security oversight, and appropriate guardianship standards. My pulse kicked hard. Appropriate according to who? I asked. People who have never once held him through a fever. The man shifted, uncomfortable but not ashamed. None of them were. Why would they be? They had never been forced to see me as a mother before. Only a variable. Ethan went still beside me in that dangerous way that meant he was choosing his next move with surgical care. But this time I did not need him first. I stepped fully toward the trustees and let every eye in that glittering room land where it wanted. My son is not a trust package. He is not a succession tool. He is not a crisis for your boardroom to solve. My voice rang sharper than I expected. Clearer too. His name is Noah. He likes fairies, science projects, and chocolate cereal. He is 7 years old. And if you think money gives you the right to reorganize his life without his mother in the room, then you are not talking about stability. You are talking about control. Silence hit hard enough to echo. Real silence this time. Not the polite kind. The dangerous kind that comes right before power strikes back. Grandfather Calloway rose from his chair near the stage with one hand on his cane, and the whole room seemed to tilt toward him. "Enough," he said. One word. Enough to freeze a room full of donors and cowards. His gaze moved to me like I was a disruption somebody should have screened out at the door. This family will not be lectured on legacy by a woman who arrived through scandal. The insult landed exactly where it was meant to. Low. Public. Final. For one brutal second, every old humiliation tried to come back at once. The hospital counter. The school office. The gossip headlines. Every room where people like this had looked at me and seen only what I lacked. Then Ethan moved. Not toward the stage. Toward me. He stepped up beside me so cleanly it felt like a declaration before he even opened his mouth. And when he finally did, his voice cut through the ballroom like a line being drawn. "Then stop calling this legacy," he said. "Because from where I am standing, it looks a lot more like cruelty." Grandfather did not raise his voice when he decided to cut Ethan out of the empire. That was the worst part. Men like him never needed volume when they had generations of obedience behind them. He stood at the center of that ballroom with his hand on his cane and said, "If you continue this public disgrace, you will no longer be recognized as my successor." The room went still so fast it felt staged. Board members froze. Donors stopped pretending not to listen. Graham actually smiled. I felt the words hit Ethan beside me, but he did not flinch. He just looked at the old man who had built his world and said, "Then maybe your empire deserves to lose me." A shock moved through the crowd. Not loud. Sharper than that. Grandfather's eyes hardened. "Think carefully. Everything you have was built by this family." Ethan took one step forward, away from the stage and closer to me, and that one movement said more than any speech could have. "No," he said. "Everything I have that matters is what this family nearly destroyed." My throat tightened before I could stop it. Graham cut in immediately, eager and smooth. "Be serious, Ethan. You are about to throw away Calloway Holdings for a woman and a child you barely know." Ethan turned his head just enough to pin him in place. "I know Noah is my son." The room took that hit like glass cracking. He did not stop there. He looked back at Grandfather, then at the trustees, then at every polished stranger who had ever mistaken money for moral authority. "And Claire Bennett is the only person in this room who has protected him without agenda from the start. So let me make this simple. She is not the scandal. She is the reason he survived long enough for any of you to say his name." I could not breathe. Not because I had never wanted someone to defend me. Because I had. I just never believed it would happen like this. Publicly. Without calculation. Without an exit plan tucked behind it. Grandfather's face went pale with controlled fury. "If you walk this line, you forfeit the chair, the voting block, and your claim to succession." Ethan's answer came clean. Immediate. "Then I forfeit it." No hesitation. No glance toward the board. No pause to measure cost. Just done. The ballroom erupted then. Murmurs. Sharp whispers. Someone near the press riser actually gasped. Graham's composure cracked for the first time all night. "Good. Let it." Ethan turned from them all and came to stand directly in front of me, close enough that the whole room could see exactly where he had chosen to be. His voice dropped, but not enough to hide it. "No one takes Noah from you," he said. "Not my grandfather. Not the board. Not me." The last two words hit the hardest, because he knew exactly which wound he was touching. My eyes burned. I hated that. I hated how much this mattered. But I did not look away. Not this time. Around us, the empire was still shaking itself apart, but the center of me had gone strangely still. Because Ethan had not just defied his family. He had cut himself loose from the future they had built for him and laid the wreckage at our feet like it was an easy trade. It was not. That was what frightened me. Love said in private was one kind of danger. A sacrifice this public was another. And as grandfather lifted his cane and called for legal counsel in a voice sharp enough to split the night in two, I understood something new. Ethan had just saved us. But men do not burn down dynasties without the fire coming back for them. The final blow did not come in a ballroom. It came in a courtroom, under bad fluorescent light and the kind of silence that makes everything sound official even when it is cruel. I sat at the petitioner's table with Noah's drawing folded inside my purse like a prayer I refused to call one. Ethan sat beside me in a charcoal suit that no longer looked like power. Not after the gala. Not after he had laid his inheritance down in front of half the city and called it an easy trade. Across the aisle, Graham looked thinner. Meaner too. Like losing public ground had only sharpened his private appetite. Lydia. Whitmore sat 2 rows back with her attorney, polished as ever, but the polish had started to crack. Good. Let it. The judge entered. Papers shuffled. Nobody breathed right. Then Ethan's counsel stood and introduced the evidence trail. The forged breakup message. The intercepted calls. The redirected email records. The internal Whitmore memo tying Lydia to legacy management strategy. Hearing my life reduced to exhibits should have hollowed me out. Instead it made something in me go cold and steady. Lydia did not look at me until the moment her name was read into the record as the source of intentional interference. Then she finally turned, and there it was. Not regret. Calculation collapsing in real time. Graham's attorney tried one last pivot. Regardless of historical misconduct, the child's long-term welfare still requires structured oversight. Structured oversight. There was that phrase again. Rich people always did love new wrapping on old theft. Before I could speak, Ethan's lawyer slid a revised trust proposal to the bench. Mr. Calloway is establishing an irrevocable educational and security trust for Noah Bennett Calloway, contingent on dual parental signatory approval for all non-emergency decisions. I turned to Ethan so fast my chair creaked. He kept his eyes on the judge. No unilateral control, he said quietly. Not by me. Not by my family. Not by anyone. The judge reviewed the filings for what felt like a year and a heartbeat at once. Then came the ruling. Graham's petition was dismissed. Lydia Whitmore was referred for civil and criminal review tied to fraudulent communications interference. Primary custody remained with me. Ethan was recognized as Noah's legal father with protected parenting rights, but no independent authority to remove Noah from my care without court approval or my consent. My lungs emptied so hard it almost hurt. Beside me, Ethan closed his eyes once. Just once. Across the aisle, Graham's face finally broke into something ugly and useless. Good. Let him take that expression home. Outside the courthouse, the air felt strange on my skin. Cleaner. Lighter. Not because everything was perfect. Because for the first time, the law had looked at my son and seen a child, not a prize. Ethan stopped on the courthouse steps and held out a final folder to me. The trust documents, he said. Only if you want to review them. I took the folder, expecting another trap, another elegant compromise. That still left me smaller. Instead, the first page carried one simple line under decision authority. Claire Bennett and Ethan Calloway shall hold equal signature rights in all matters concerning Noah's long-term welfare. I looked up at him. That sounds fair, I said. The words came out quieter than I meant them to. Ethan's mouth softened at one corner. Not victory. Relief. Real relief. And standing there in daylight instead of scandal, with no judge left to impress and no empire left to defend, I realized the last real case between us was no longer legal at all. It was personal. And that one had only just begun. Charleston looked smaller than the grief I had once tied to it. The ferry dock was almost empty that evening, washed in gold light and salt wind, and for one strange second I felt like time had folded in on itself just to see whether I would break the same way twice. Ethan stood beside me with his hands in his coat pockets, no security detail in sight, no lawyers, no board members, no family name pushing at his back. Just him. That alone felt unreal. Why here? I asked, though I already knew. Ethan looked out at the water. Because this is where I first knew losing you would ruin me. The words landed deep and clean. No performance. No witnesses. Just damage finally spoken in the right place. I let the wind hit my face so he would not see how much it mattered. You are late, I said softly. I know. He turned toward me then, and there was no shield left in his expression. Claire, I am sorry for more than one mistake. I am sorry for every empty room you had to walk into alone. Every bill you paid scared. Every time Noah got sick and I was not there. Every year you had to make yourself hard enough to survive because I was not beside you. My throat tightened so fast it hurt. Ethan stepped closer, careful, like he still believed I might leave if he moved too fast. I cannot give you back the years. I cannot unmake what my family did. But I can tell you this clearly now. I choose you. I choose Noah. And I am done letting power decide what I protect. That should have been too much. Too late. Too dangerous. Instead it felt like the first honest thing I had been offered without a hidden cost. I looked at him and saw all of it at once. The boy I loved. The man I hated. The father my son had already started reaching for. I do not need perfect, I whispered. I need present. I need real. I need someone who stays when it is ugly. Ethan's answer came without hesitation. Then I stay. Simple. No grand speech. Just the one promise I had begged life for in 100 different forms. Something in me gave way. Not because the pain was gone. Because it finally had somewhere safe to land. I reached for him first. That was how I knew it was real. My hand caught his coat, my breath caught with it, and then I kissed him before fear could rewrite me again. Ethan made a low sound like relief hurt too, then held me with the kind of care that made every lost year feel mourned instead of erased. When we finally broke apart, the fairy horn sounded out across the water, low and haunting and almost kind. I laughed through tears I had not meant to let him see. Ethan brushed one away with his thumb and rested his forehead against mine. So what happens now? He asked. I looked out at the harbor, then back at the man I had loved twice and lost once and found the hard way. Now, I said, you come home with me. And this time, you do not leave. 3 months later, I unlocked the glass door to the Bennett Harbor Foundation with my own key and my own name etched across the wall. That mattered more than anyone else in the room could possibly understand. The ribbon had already been cut. The cameras had gone. What remained was the part one actually wanted. A small tutoring space for kids from single-parent homes. A resource desk for mothers who had spent too many nights choosing between rent and medicine. Mine. Not gifted to me. Not handed down. Built with money Ethan insisted stay transparent and under my control, and for once, power had not erased me. It had finally stood back and let me build. Noah ran between the reading corner and the window seat in a navy sweater, holding up a paper fairy he had made in the art room. Mom, he called, beaming, look. It floats if you imagine hard enough. I laughed and took it from him, kissing the top of his head before I could overthink the softness of my own life. Then we better keep imagining. Ethan stepped in from the front hall just then, carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing that look that still had the power to stop something in me. Not cold now. Steady. Chosen. I heard there is a founder here who forgot to eat lunch, he said. I took the cup from him and narrowed my eyes. You spying on me again? His mouth shifted at one corner. Only legally. Noah groaned. That was a dad joke. Ethan crouched beside him without shame. And I stand by it. Watching them together still hit me in the same bruised, beautiful place every time. Not because I feared losing it anymore. Because I did not. That was new. That was everything. Later that afternoon, we drove Noah to his new school. Smaller class size. Better support. No whispers trailing after his last name. He got out of the car, backpack bouncing once against his shoulders, then leaned back in through the open door and asked the question that would have wrecked me months ago. Do I have to tell them I am the heir? Ethan looked at me first. Always me now too. I smiled at Noah and brushed his hair off his forehead. You can tell them whatever matters most. Noah thought for 1 second, then grinned. Then I will tell them I like fairies and volcanoes. Ethan laughed under his breath. Excellent priorities. Noah ran toward the building without looking back, because children only stop looking back when they finally believe the people behind them will stay. I stood there in the parking lot and let that truth settle all the way through me. By evening, we were at the Calloway estate for dinner. Not a performance. Not a negotiation. Grandfather was older suddenly. Smaller too. He watched Noah talk about his science project over mashed potatoes and finally said, in a voice stripped of everything unnecessary, he looks like a Calloway. But more importantly, he sounds like himself. It was not warmth. It was enough. Ethan's hand found the small of my back under the table, and this time there was no courtroom behind it, no gala, no claim. Just us. On the drive home, city lights sliding gold across the windshield, I looked at the two people beside me. Noah asleep in the back seat with his paper fairy in his lap. Ethan driving one-handed, calm and solid and still here. The fear that had run my life for 7 years did not vanish in some dramatic burst. It loosened. Quietly. Like a knot finally giving up. I rested my head against the seat and let myself say the thing I never could have believed at the hospital, at the school, at the courthouse, at any of the places where the world tried to make me small. We were no longer running. Ethan glanced over. What are you thinking? I looked at him and smiled, simple and real and earned the hard way. That they hunted an heir, I said softly. But what we found was a family.